most of you already know me, but I'll give you a little background just because. So I had type 1 for 20 years. I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old. And luckily, it was right before Halloween, so that was a really fun time. I was on injections until I was in middle school. Then my endocrinologist convinced me to go on a pump, which I stayed on for 12 years. And then by choice in January of 2013, realizing that it wasn't quite working for me, there was a better way for me to do things. I found an endocrinologist who supported my plan of action, and I went back to daily injections. I also worked really, really hard on my nutrition, lowered my carb intake, and was able to get my A1C down to 5.5. On the pump, it had steadily been going up. I had climbed to 7.4 and was not comfortable at all with what was going on. I was doing everything they told me to for my food log of oatmeal and egg whites every morning and lots of whole grains, gaining weight, cholesterol issues, and I was 22 years old. So I knew there was a better way. What does any college kid do? We take to Google. So I stumbled across paleo, and that's kind of what opened my eyes to there was a better way to do things. Then I ended up finding Dr. Bernstein, and the rest was kind of history. So I've always been very active. I played soccer into my sophomore year of college. I was actually the place kicker in my high school. It was crazy. Really into weight training, all that kind of stuff. And if it had not been for diabetes, I probably would not have pursued a career in fitness or anything health related. But I kind of feel like they go hand in hand. I feel like you really can't have diabetes and not care about your health and not be somewhat active. So that led to me being a personal trainer, doing group fitness. Eventually, I became certified through Mark Sisson's company, if anyone's familiar with him. He's huge in the paleo primal world. So a health coach through his organization, as well as an associate diabetes educator. And that's where I am today. So we're going to talk about exercise and diabetes. I'm going to share some of my story and what I have done to kind of avoid the exercise blood sugar roller coaster. So I'm going to start with high school because I know that there are some parents here that have kids that will be, playing football or soccer or what have you. And dealing with diabetes in sports was something that the doctors did not prepare me for. Basically, I experienced a roller coaster the whole time I was involved in athletics, and no one took the time to teach me how I should be eating for these workouts, how I should be balancing my insulin for these workouts. Usually I was told to carb load. So what that looked like before a soccer game was we all load up in somebody's car, we head to Subway, and you chow down on a 6-inch turkey sub, and you kind of guesstimate how many carbs that is, and you plug it into your pump, but usually you underestimate because we're all scared of the lows, because that's what we are taught is to just live in terror. And that's not how it should be. So what would happen is I would go into the game with my blood sugar already a little high, probably running between 150 and 160 because I'm terrified of the lows. I would play an intense game for 80 to 90 minutes. Halftime, my blood sugar would be elevated. I'd try to take a little correction. I would get to the end of the game, and I would typically finish over 200. And I would be frustrated. I would feel terrible. And then I would correct, and an hour and a half later, I would plummet and have to stuff my face. So it was a really vicious cycle, and it definitely did not help. Being a teenage girl, I'm very athletic. All my friends can stay skinny and eat all this food, but I'm stuffing my face all the time because of the low blood sugars, and now my pants don't fit. So it created, even more issues to deal with for me. So I just kept riding that roller coaster. So I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and by the time I graduated college, that's when I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And that's when I pretty much took everything into my own hands. I really started researching, making my own plans, and when the doctors that I had wouldn't support it and said I was going backwards, I found somebody who did. So that's one thing that I want to say is find somebody that will support you. Doctors are not God, they're advisors, and if you have a gut feeling about something, don't go quietly, because it's your life, it's your child's life. So what did I learn? Well, the main thing we all know is that most of us are concerned with lows, and they suck, they really do. But the medical community has made us so scared of them because they haven't taught us how to deal with things correctly. We don't have to plummet from exercise. We don't have to skyrocket from exercise. So the first type of exercise that I want to talk about is high intensity exercise. So maybe you're playing a really intense soccer game. Maybe you're doing a short duration, high volume type of lifting workout, boot camp, something like that, that's cardio and weights with very little rest time. Most diabetics that I work with are terrified of these kinds of workouts because they think that they're going to go low, but what happens is they start to skyrocket very quickly, and that's because our bodies start to release our stored glucose because they're like, we need this glucose to fuel your muscles to do all of this work, which is great for somebody with a functioning pancreas. Not so good for us because we can't balance that. So what I started realizing is that when I am planning my workouts and I know that they're going to be higher stress, higher intensity, besides going in with a blood sugar that is like probably 100, not much higher than that, I need to either increase, if you're running a pump, increase the basal or pre-bolus. So since I do MDI, I typically, depending on the workout that I know I'm doing, will take a half a unit to a unit of insulin 20 minutes before my exercise. And that keeps me pretty steady. It keeps me from seeing that really quick spike. I might go up a little bit, but it's not going to be, landing in the 200 range that I was previously. It is also keeping me from crashing later on because I realized that this is going to make me very sensitive to my insulin, and I do not need to correct in the same way that I would, otherwise. So you might need half the correction factor that you typically would at that kind of exercise. So when I was, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, is that Humalog?
Yes, Humalog, Novolog, whichever one. So when I was first experiencing all of this kind of stuff, and I thought, well, if this is making my blood sugar go up, and I really don't want to have to take extra insulin to exercise, maybe I should just avoid that form of exercise altogether, which we should not do. Strenuous exercise has a lot of benefits for us. So it helps us increase our HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and lower triglycerides in our blood. And it's also good to help, hang on, lost my place here. It helps lower our risk of heart attack, stroke, lowers our blood pressure. Over time, it will lower your resting heart rate. So we don't want to avoid it altogether. We just need to know how to prepare to do this exercise. So some other things that I found that were helpful is the timing of exercise. A lot of people with type 1 don't necessarily do super well working out first thing in the morning. And the reason is our blood sugar is naturally rising at that time from the dawn phenomenon. We are more resistant to our insulin. So let's not, give ourselves a double whammy there. So if you can wait until the afternoon to exercise, that might be best for you. So that's something that I also found helpful. I mentioned the pre-workout bolus. When I was pumping, setting my pump to about 125% was what worked for me. Of course, that varies person to person. You kind of have to try things out. And this is an off-label thing that I was trying. Simlin, which is a synthetic form of amylin, I was using that pre-workout to help my liver not dump extra glucose. So that is something that I tried that also did work as well, but that's not prescribed usage for it. However, I did find lots of diabetic athletes that were using it for that purpose. and they all seem to, you know, still maintain a good blood sugar through their strenuous exercise. And one of my last tips with that is when you're going into your workout, like I said, I try to make sure my blood sugar is not already elevated. Probably not over 140. I personally wouldn't even do a strenuous workout if I was at 140, but definitely not over that, because 140 is where you're starting to experience damage, cellular damage. So we definitely, you know, at that point, go for a walk, do something a little less strenuous until it comes back down. All right, so we're gonna move on to less strenuous stuff. So maybe, you know, going out there and doing an Insanity Max 30 workout isn't your thing. Maybe you like hiking or biking or yoga, maybe even doing, I'm gonna call it walking, you know, a walk jog. So on this end of the spectrum, this is actually where people will find more of their low blood sugars. The long duration, very slow type of thing. You know, if you've ever gone and hiked up a mountain, I don't know about you, but I can be 30 minutes in and it's like, where's my snack? So you might see a slight rise at first as the body is being challenged by that exercise, but over time it's going to start to decline. So this is where you might want to decrease that basal, set a temporary basal that's decreased. Or for me on MDI, I just make sure, like, when was my last meal? And I kind of have that in the back of my head if I'm going to plan that type of exercise. Or it's a really good thing, I like to plan my long morning walk, like, a little after breakfast, because it's also going to help me alleviate if there is any rise in the blood sugar and not have to take extra insulin. So, what should we do? What exercise should we do? Ideally, it's going to be a mixture of both. So having resistance training, weight training, sprinting, having some low intensity things like walking, biking, throwing in some yoga, you still need that flexibility training in there as well. And it's important to mix these things, yes, for insulin sensitivity, but also to help us with things like slowing our bone loss and having good muscle mass. And it also is going to help us burn fat, which is something that most of us women want to do especially. And having those weight-bearing exercises is going to do that a lot better than just cardio alone. So personally, what I've found to work well for me is to incorporate a couple different strategies. I walk every day because I personally enjoy it. It is a stress reliever for me, which is definitely important with diabetes to keep your stress down. But I do one day of sprinting, a very short sprint workout, so that is a higher stress thing, so that's going to be a pre-bolus for me. I do lots of body weight training. I do CrossFit 2 days a week. I also try to incorporate a day of yoga, and then play. Play is really important. So if you're going to get out and do a basketball game with your kids, or a pickup soccer game, or something like that, something that's fun, that's also keeping you active. It doesn't always have to be super structured. Just move your body. Let's see. Yeah, and the other thing that I was going to say is if you are doing strenuous exercise, follow up with a walk or a bike ride to help naturally bring down those levels. You'll see a lot of people at the gym working out this way. They might do a heavy lift, and then you'll see them on the elliptical or the treadmill for like 20 minutes. You can follow that same principle. They're doing it for a different reason, but for you it can be to help bring that blood sugar down after like a heavy lifting session. So I hope some of this information was helpful. And if you guys have any questions, can you